So we're in Michoacan, and I think it begs the question, what are we doing here, and why Michoacan? Um, us taking a little video tour to Cotija, Michoacan in a second will be a, a, a picture description as to what we're doing here in terms of the history and what led to all of this. But in short, my family's from Michoacan, specifically Cotija, Michoacan. And at some point around 2014, 2015, I made a trip to Morelia, Michoacan, which is right over there in that direction. And the intention was to start working with a producer to bring back a mezcal from this region. I felt it was appropriate that I try to represent my home state from my roots, from where my Chavez family is from, Chavez Figueroa specifically. And so I did that. Came here, met a mezcalero named Isidro Perez Scott. And at first, for the longest of time, he was our only producer. So we brought a black label Cuprieta expression up to the United States. Cuprieta would be the agave that is abundant here, the one that most mezcaleros work with. Not all mezcaleros, but most mezcaleros. And so that was the first expression we brought to market, and that was kind of solely our objective at the moment. And then as things evolved, it became very obvious to me that I was growing a deeper love kind of for my roots and what was going on here in Michoacan. I became a dual citizen because both my parents were born in Mexico, so I was afforded the opportunity to do that because of it. And after I did that, the first thing that happened was a partnership that formed with Isidro Perez Scott, our original mezcalero up in Etucuaro, Michoacán. And we'll get a chance to see a picture of Etucuaro, Michoacán here in a second. And then shortly after that, and this is all with the support of the whole Puente team in the United States, everyone who supported us on all levels, some of them watching here. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that support. Specifically, I know Les Pintoff is watching. So Les, someone that's been working with me from day one on the streets. And so saludos to Les. And we then started a new project for another vinata as we saw our demand increasing and our responsibility, I think, to grow the right way, knowing that mezcal is such an intimate product. It's a product that takes a lot of love and labor, and there's no way to really scale that kind of production abruptly. You really need to plan ahead, and you really need to kind of be working towards a certain goal, knowing what you were trying to accomplish. And it seemed to us that as our markets were growing, our states were growing, our supports were growing, we needed to do this. And so you'll see in a second what that means for us. Also, real quick, who's with me here as a co-host is Farron. Farron would be the reason you guys are all here watching. So thank you, Farron, for getting everybody on board and sending all the emails and bringing this all together, including some links that will shoot you, not links, but discount codes that we were able to pull together with Moreno's Liquor in Chicago. Shout out to Mikey and the Moreno family. And then Old Town Liquor in San Diego, California. Shout outs to Roman and the family and Z. So we'll shoot those out to you guys as well as our YouTube link for our YouTube channel in case you guys want to revisit this later on. This will go live there and be there for the record. It'll be there on record. So going back to the story, full support in starting this one, and then also Vinata in Cotija, Michoacán. And I think maybe be a good time to start playing the Cotija footage. So Farron's going to share with you, share her screen, and there will be a video that was just recorded on Friday of last week, where I took a trip there with Esteban Garibay from La Venenosa Raicilla, as well as my right-hand man down here, Adrian Gallegos, in charge of all things operations, really makes this all work for us down here. And then we got a chance to visit my tío Gonzalo. So with that being said, ready to roll? Yeah, let's roll. So in the beginning here, as we get this started, one thing to kind of note is, let's see this thing roll, and then I'll get you guys going. So here we go. This is just going to be me recording the drive-in. Michoacan, as we describe it, is agriculturally rich. It's abundant with so many things. Let's stop right there real quick. That kind of flew, unless I'm behind. Are we flying, or are we on 31 seconds, 32 seconds? We're good?
Yeah, we're at 32.
Okay, got it. I missed the first 30. But I just, the drive-in obviously just is a reference to kind of the agricultural beauty, the green scenery of Michoacan. It's something that makes it very special. Avocado capital of the world. You know, you name it, it grows here. The soils are very fertile, very rich with nutrients. It's why we have such beautiful agave here amongst other things. So and a lot of berries, a lot of different fruits, which I think is very important to how what fermentation means to us from a natural yeast perspective and the different regions we represent. So here we're in Cotija, the drive-in. Here we start our scene on the vinata itself. This is going to be Encino Verde, specifically Verde, so it's a little bit wet, not too dry, to properly roast our agaves when they're underground. Am I behind? There we go. So oven here. So I'm going to show you guys a Etucuaro oven as well as the ovens we have here, with reference to all of them being earth ovens. So in the ground, conic earth ovens in the ground. That's what these are. These are lined with stone. The one in Etucuaro is as well. We'll get into the details of kind of why that's important and what relevance that has as we go here. So what we have here is going to be our pila for where we by hand macerate in Cotija. Now, in our new vinata here in Indaparapeo and in Etucuaro, both there's a choice of what we're doing, depends on volumes, whether we're using kind of a mechanical tractor mill, if you will, or we're doing it by hand. In Cotija specifically, my tío Gonzalo, which you guys will see a picture of here in a second, he is adamant that we keep the hand fermentation because he loves hard labor, as most of my Chavez Figueroa family does. So as you could tell, it's been beat up and not that many batches have been made there, but that's how it's done. As we go forward here, this is a cool picture for you guys to see. This is iconic Cotija cheese. So my family is from a state, from Michoacan and Cotija. Cotija being really known across the whole world for its cheese. It's kind of a staple of the state. It's a cheese that kind of Parmesan-y. It's super flavorful. It's the best pairing for mezcal. Specifically, this picture, the Bruto on the left that just released to the market for us, and the cheese on the right, the Cotija cheese, is literally like the perfect pairing and what my family grew up on, because the region has a lot of wild Bruto. And that is kind of what my story was, and how my grandfather would watch a mezcalero come harvest a Bruto piña, agave, take the piña, come back with mezcal, and they'd have trade and barter for certain goods. And my dad and his siblings, as well as my grandparents, when we would go to Cotija when I was young, would always be sipping on mezcal, which was Bruto, made from agave, maguey Bruto, and eating some Cotija cheese. So it really ties into who we are and what we are. Keep going here. I'm okay. It's going. So this, if we could stop right here real quick, just take these in, these stills. It'll be something that we reference in a second. It really is the fundamental kind of differentiating factor for Michoacan and how we produce mezcal. And so these are pine wood stills that we have in all our vinatas. So we can keep going here. Here's just the grounds for it. Now here's ollas de barro. So this is something that that Michoacan usually is not known for. A lot of people don't know. You know, most of the Morelia and nearby areas all take part in distilling with that wood still, the Filipino still that we saw a second ago. In Cotija and that region of Michoacan, specifically because it's tied to the Sierra del Tigre of Jalisco, that whole region has historically distilled with clay pot. And now that's kind of unique from a category standpoint. That for us as a state gets to represent both artisanal as well as ancestral mezcal. The flavors that come from this kind of still is very, very different, beautiful and layered. On the right, you're going to see kind of the receptor, what's inside here, what would hold our mosto, etc. And then on top, On top would be loaded the other part of the still, where it's actually gonna well, there's a spoon. Well, we'll get into these details in a second, where it would catch a mezcal once condensation happens. So we can keep going. After that, let's see this thing move. Here we go. Just more on kind of the scene. I'm trying to capture 3D. Here are hornillas. Hornillas are, for a lot of people that might know them, kind of like pizza ovens, maybe like a wood-fired pizza oven. So in there, you're going to have a live wood fire that's going to be powering or heating up the caso, the copper caso. Once again, I'm going to get into all these details here in a second. These are a picture here. We have three of our wood stills in Cotija. And then coming up over here on the left, that's how they end there on top. Up here on the left is going to be our alambiques de barro. And then we jump into some scenery here. Once again, kind of capturing what Michoacán really has to offer. This is up in the sierras, up in the hills. This is where literally these are the grounds my father was walking when he was a young buck. They were out there working the fields from the time that he remembers being able to walk, he says. Over here on the bottom right, kind of by that truck, maybe middle, on the left, on the left, behind those trees is an hacienda, the Chavez Figueroa hacienda. That's historic to our family. Really brings this whole thing together for us. Beautiful history. That's my father, his primo hermanos. A lot of our family was born there, and this is this vinatas right next to it, which captures beautifully. And then let's keep going here. Kind of more on these clay pot stills. Kind of once again a differentiating factor for us, especially for Michoacan produced mezcal. Here we go. And now in a second here, we're going to jump into a scene in Etucuaro. It's going to be very brief, but basically, just to give you a quick idea, what we have as a setup in Cotija is pretty much identical in Etucuaro, with the exception of layout. The layout in Etucuaro is a little different. It's just a different setup, but nevertheless, we have two hornos there that are earth ovens. No, sorry, one horno. So one in Cotija, one there. We have three stills in Cotija, three stills in Etucuaro of the wood stills. The scene on the left in this picture was Cotija. The scene on the right was Etucuaro. And just for reference, just so you could see that they're exactly the same in terms of an earth line or earth stone, earth oven. And these would be a picture of our stills in Etucuaro specifically. So that's kind of the rundown on those two sites, those two vinatas for us. Both of those being a part of our history. Both of them really being able to, they help us really make an impact in different parts of the state in terms of how we're able to impact the economies in each one as a brand that's growing. So, back at you here in Indaparapeo. So both of them let us tell two different stories about us. One about the start here in Michoacan as far as a brand, and another one really ties into my family and our origin of Michoacan. And then this next part of the story, which I'm going to walk you guys through in a second, really tells maybe what we would call our next phase. Us preparing ourselves for what we see coming, what we know is coming through new states that we're entering with purchase orders, new partners that we have formed across the country. Right now we went from, I believe at the end of last year was 7 states, and now we're in 14. So as you imagine, if we had not done this, we'd be a little behind. And so that being said, I'm gonna start walking you guys through what this new space is for us, this new vinata. So let me flip this. All right, so here we are. So first shot here, just so you guys have a little scene. This is under construction still, which is again part of our story. A company working to grow. So under construction in a lot of senses. So this is kind of one of our edges of this property. It's 1 hectare in size, close to 3 acres. Over here, just to briefly show, this is Espadín agave that one of our partners, Juan Luis had been growing for quite some time. And then there's also Blue Weber out there. And then over here we have some Salmiana. This is kind of a new story for us. Salmiana is an agave that for Michoacan is not really represented in many formats out there with mezcal itself. Us, being maybe adventurers and going out there and understanding what agaves are out in the state, as well as knowing what agaves, we've seen produce really good mezcal. We feel very lucky to know that there's Salmiana here and be able to use it in our next batches. Probably special batches that we'll release in 3-packs with 375 milliliter presentation. So they're a little bit more accessibly priced for the market because they're definitely a little more expensive to make. Over there, kind of a little far away is our warehouse, a little office we have, a little house where we have most of our was almacén, so storage of all of our goods, bottles, tops, labels, etc., where most of our administrative team works out here in Michoacán. Right now, I'm walking you towards this vinata. As you can tell, or maybe you can't tell yet, it's absolutely different in size. It's rather big. I think what you'll notice is any way you cut it, as far as what I'll show you here in a second, it doesn't deviate from how we do things at our other sites. It just gives us the ability really to produce at a different level. One of our core expressions is a cuprieta expression. That was our original expression. As you know, we brought it out as a mezcal that's been deemed a mezcal for sipping for sure, but price point and flavor profiles definitely allowed it to enter the cocktail space. And fortunately for us, that's something that keeps us really busy up here. And so any given day, that's what we're really working on is cuprieta. And then a lot of other times, we would be working on our other expressions like bruto, manto saguayo, tequilana, chino silvestre. Now the salmiana, which is a pulquero. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a shot from afar over here. So first over here, we're building kind of our water, our source for water, all the storage of it. Plenty of water in Michoacán, and we have plenty of access to it here due to some moves we've made, which is very essential for producing mezcal, just distillates as a whole, but definitely mezcal. And I'll show you guys why. And now we get to the part where right now I'm sitting in our area of cocción, everything that has to do with cooking or roasting agaves. And so here, what you're going to notice is the ground here is all dirt where I'm sitting right now. You guys see that? In a second here, it'll turn to cement. There's 2 reasons for that. One is just the stage that we are in. The other one is that some of this dirt is really tight, not too wet, and it allows for cooking to happen without energy or any of the heat to exit through the sides. That's not the case with all dirt. For example, in Cotija, that's not the case at all. The charanda soils there, the really red and really red and nutrient-rich soils, they also are. There's a lot of water there. In Michoacán, they say that water is born, nace agua, so natural mantle water, a lot of it. And due to that, we had to definitely line that one in stone. And that's the only way we would be able to properly cook agave. As you might imagine, to do it in this fashion is definitely more challenging than maybe using an autoclave like tequila uses or brick ovens, which is still really considered a small batch for tequila. Here we have multiple stone ovens, another one here. I'm trying to make sure this thing is rotating with me. Let me see. No, the other way. Hold on. There we go. Boom. So this is just a scene of the dirt. What I have here is all the volcanic rock. That's actually what really fire powers this oven once it is closed. What it starts with is wood and a wood fire, and then all this volcanic rock layered on top of it. Here. Another one here. Hold on a sec. Still trying to maneuver this thing. Here we go. Okay, another earth oven there. Another, this would be dirt earth ovens here. All accessible. These are a little bit bigger in size. At least 10 tons would fit in these, whereas the ones in Cotija might fit about 6 tons, maybe more in Etucuaro. So obviously our ability to produce more here is pretty obvious. This oven here is getting ready to be built tomorrow. We have all our wood here, Encino Verde, right here. Not too dry, still a little green. All the earth, the volcanic rock lined up around it. That little oven, this one's smaller. This one's about 4 tons in capacity. And we've left for smaller batch items that we make. For example, this will be for the salmiana. So first we'll go, this wood will go in there first. And our guys are gonna line it up. Then they're gonna layer all this rock on top, leave a little hole in the middle. And they're gonna light that over here. Actually, this is, I didn't notice it, but I'm gonna show you. There is a little bit of very particular wood here. This wood here would be left in the middle to really be kind of a fire starter. So they'll light that up in the middle, let that fire get going. This might be as early as 5 in the morning, maybe earlier, and then maybe 7 to 12 hours later, depending on how cold it is. And right now, for example, it's windy. In the morning, it was hot. The rocks would be scorching red hot, and then that would be the indicator that piña is ready to line up. On top of the rock, we're gonna put some wet bagazo. Bagazo is shredded agave that's left over after we distill, and I'll show you guys why. And so to repurpose that, and also as a layer to kind of protect the agave, you don't want to actually fire roast the agave. You don't want fire to actually impact the agave. That's not the purpose of this kind of oven and how it was used. The purpose of it is what's going to happen is once you close it, the fire will eventually dissipate. The rock will still be really hot. There'll be the smoke in there, and all that heat is going to be penetrating the agave for a while. You know, sometimes a week, sometimes a little more, depending on what the agave is. The temperature is a lot of different factors. This is another oven here. And what happens is, so going back to the picture, so you have the wood, then the volcanic rock on top. Then you're going to put the agave, and then you're going to put the petates. These are petates here. Get these wet, layer that on top of the agave. These are made of like a dried palm leaves. And then you put the dirt on. You put the dirt, and that's going to be what seals your agave. So that's when it starts cooking. And then indicators of proper cooking is going to be that the next day we show up, and the agave would have gone from potentially this tall, I don't know if you guys can tell how tall it is, to maybe this tall. And that difference in height is going to be telling us that the agave has been is properly cooking. There's no leaks of energy, no pockets, and that's going to be how we know that the oven's starting to work properly in terms of cooking. Got it. Okay, so I'm going to move. Give me one sec, guys. I'm still getting used to this wand, but here we go. So going back this way. This is the scene from this side. So I just walked you guys through it from the back over there to the front with these two ovens here. Both of these 8+ tons in size, these ones that are lined up with stone. Once again, you know, dirt not really being proper for it to be left without the stone. And also an indicator of what stage we're at. So now we're walking down. Well, one thing here, real quick. This here is an area where whether we're in there with axes or we're using that kind of tractor mill that I mentioned, this is where we receive all of our bagazo or shred. So the agave gets cooked. Now it's cooked, then it's ready to be shredded, because here we use actual agave for our fermentation process for how we ferment. And so all of the bagazo, as well as any juices, might get captured here. And if you guys can't tell, there's a little bit of kind of little PVC pipes there where any of the excess juice might flow through. And then we would have, we would have our area of fermentation, and that's where we are here. That's what I'm going to walk into right now. So today we did a full count. Total, we have 43 pinas, all wood pinas, pine wood, typically. The size of this place would fit at least 100, but for now, this is what we're working with. And I'm walking down to the next stage.
Chava, for those that don't know, do you want to explain a little bit how each step influences the flavors, like the wood and the oven?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So going back to the oven, you know what's actually cooking through the agave, as I mentioned, what actually is going to influence there would be what many people will view as why mezcal might be a smoky agave, right? The factor of which wood you use, how much time you put it under there, all those things would really be what might differentiate that smoke. You know, some people would characterize certain mezcal expressions really smoky. Others might, like ours, they would say it's light in smoke, maybe a smoky finish. But definitely, so what actually goes on there scientifically, just so we're aware, is agave has sugars from the get-go when you harvest them, but the process of cooking agave actually converts them into fermentable sugars. And then that obviously the way that you execute on that would have a lot of influence on how well you're going to ferment afterwards, right? How much sugar you were able to convert there or get prepared for fermentation is going to be a big indicator to the next step, which is where I'm at right now. As well as, for example, going back to us hand macerating or the tractor mill, et cetera, but really more specifically using bagazo in our fermentation. And not one of the differentiators I was asked the other day, what might differentiate Michoacan from specifically Oaxaca, because that's what most people reference is, you know, here I have not seen any taunas, for example, something that would crush out juice a lot more effectively. The way that we do it here, I've always explained, is kind of equivalent to building like a cup of tea. Our bagazo are kind of like the tea bags that with water create our mosto, our must. That would then be what ultimately is converting our sugars into alcohol. And that is what the activity is that is going on in here. One sec. Obviously, the wood fermentation vats, very different than using stainless steel. The factors in there are going to be from anything the bacteria is left over from the last time. And I say that positively, bacteria being kind of like the yeast that might have influenced the last batch, etc., as well as flavors that are going to be developed in these wood vats versus something a little more neutral like stainless steel. So here, actually, here are some tinas that are working. These tinas here, as you can tell, are tinas that have bagazo. Under this layer, right here, the sombrero, we call it sombrero because that means this is getting closer to being ready. Once we've mixed it in, got all the water going, this is all bagazo, as you can tell here. These are little shreds of agave that are done by either hand. This was done by that like kind of tractor mill I was telling you guys about. They're fine. These all have the sugars around it, and with the water, create that you know, for lack of a better term, I'm gonna keep saying it, but like that kind of tea that is our mosto, that is what's converting into alcohol. From this point here, what's going to end up happening once we deem it ready. So what ends up happening for us is we have these sheets on each one kind of numbered. And we're taking notes on this every day. This would be Hernan, this would be Reyes that you're going to see in a second. These would be our guys, they're kind of decision makers, mezcaleros for us that are telling us, okay, these are ready, these aren't. Mezcal is definitely a process that's much more done by feel and taste than science necessarily, you know, to a certain extent. And so you have to check these every day. It's part of the work. Part of the work is doing that, making sure that these things are working properly. At some point before these form the sombrero, you're going to see a lot of bubbling in different parts of it, a lot more activity. But at some point, the mosto dies. There's no more yeast in there working. And now it's ready to distill. And so that's where we're going to be headed in a second here. Let me see. So here, we're heading towards Alice Boy. So here we have Adrian Gallegos, the man I was mentioning you, right hand man in charge of El Barco, the boat down here. All of our team knows him as Gallegos, El Gallo. And here we have our whole team, from Camarones making them a little bit of food to the rest of the squad. ¿Qué onda, vatos? ¿Qué onda? to Alejandra, who's on our administrative team, who's a little shy right now. And then we have Hernan right here. Hernan, you might recognize his name is on a lot of labels that we have in the US as our Maestro Mezcalero. The one thing that might become very obvious to you guys is the youth that we have here. All these guys are from an area right up there called Las Palmas. And they're out here every day really busting their butt, making this work for us and doing a hell of a job as we're growing. So now I'm at the point of distillation, and I get a unique opportunity to kind of show you guys the ins and outs of our stills and what they're really like. So I'm gonna start here and make sure I can get this properly. Okay, so this is what the Filipino wood still that I mentioned. Bato, un favor, ponte al lado. I'm using Adrian as reference as just for height. So Adrian might be a good 5'6". 1.20, so 1.2 meters. 1.20. Yeah, so about 10 extra, 0.10 extra meters for the actual copper, the copper cone here. So this is a copper cone. All this stuff's made in Santa Clara del Cobre, an area that's famous here in Michoacan for their hand working of copper. And this is the wood still here, right? Okay, and I'm gonna go in parts here. So then the next part to this is gonna be what receives our mosto, which is gonna be a copper caso. That's right here. So we're putting about 250 liters per turn on these things, right? Each time we're changing them out, it's about 250 liters of product. So now I have one here that I have disassembled. You can see it. This is what the copper cone on top looks like on its side. So cone there on the top, it's just a flat piece of copper that's made into a cone. In here, what you'll notice is that it's hollow, completely hollow. Down there is another caso filled with a little bit of mezcal that we're going to distill later. And this particular thing right here is a cuchara, this guy right here, a copper cuchara. And what's going to happen here, what's really happening is in the copper caso, and this guy, everything starts getting hot by a wood fire that I'll show you in a second. All that heat is building up in this hollow still that is topped off by this cone. So what ends up happening is all that steam starts coming up all the way to the top once it gets to a particular heat. Ahorita un segundo. Ahorita un segundo. Particular heat level starts getting to the top, and then with cold water, which is coming from this hose right here. This is a hose. Let's see if I can demonstrate that without messing this up. Hold on. I'll show you in a second. Just one go here. Hold on. Here we go. There. Water. That starts hitting the cone on the top. And that creates condensation, separation of the water from alcohol. And all of our alcohol gets caught in here and it comes out as mezcal. Now, as you might imagine, some of it doesn't, and it goes down the sides, and at which point it comes back up. It redistills to the top, and that same process happens as we're all going. All right. And then what I wanted to show you guys here is kind of one of the, I'm not going to call this technology, but this is definitely an improvement in the way for our team. Is at the top here, what you see is this kind of mechanism that as I come down, you see is holding this still on its side. This really allows for these guys to not break their back because these things are heavy. It's a very big challenge, especially when they're hot, to remove when you're ready to go on to the next stage. So this is something that Adrian made up to provide some much needed help for, you know, our young guys. Although they're healthy and strong, these things are heavy. Usually takes 3 guys to move them around, and so it's very helpful to hold on here and get everything up in the air. And so on this side we have 4 stills for these alambiques. Over here we have an area for it's going to be what 16 more stills over here on this whole area. Right now we've improvised with the first 8. We have a lot more to go. So here are the next 4 right here. Hernan once again. And so what's happening in this whole process, as I was mentioning, is walking slow as I can. This is the cold water that's making the impact to create the condensation. As this thing's filling up, it's coming down here, and this pipe goes back down, recirculates. So once it gets cool, it recirculates back. So we keep continuous use of the same water for distillation. For this part, you don't need necessarily clean water. You want the water to be cold. That's really your objective. But what you'll notice is here, this mezcal here that's coming out. This is the mezcal that's coming out here. You guys see this dripping? Can you guys see that clearly? It's dripping. You see that? Yeah. Okay, cool. This is hot. It's hot to the touch. It's hot to drink. Other parts of Mexico would use a second condensation after this point. So that hot liquid would go down another pipe or copper pipe, or even wood sometimes, and then go into another condensation process. Then it comes out cold. The challenge in this really just becomes consuming it right away, of course, right? And then mezcal, as it rests and it cools down, it evolves. So you're making choices on your cuts based on this hotter flavor, and eventually they evolve. Sometimes glass maturation, which is the process of putting your mezcal in glass and letting it rest for some time, definitely makes it evolve in a different way as well. Gives it really beautiful flavors. So all these factors really matter, and this is kind of very specific to Michoacan tradition. And then here, this is our wood fire here, and that's what's heating up the caso. And then, 1 second. And then here we are. Goes up here, does the magic, condensation. Then we start making our cuts, making our choices on how this distillado is going to come to create our ultimate product. And that's kind of all she wrote here. Let me make sure. Let me see. Okay. That's kind of the end of it. It's kind of the end of this story with this particular place, and how many expressions on the market. The being Cupreta that I mentioned. Recently, we were fortunate to get to the double gold for the Chino Silvestre, and a couple other medals for the Montesaguayo, and some recognition in different publications, which were, telling these guys. I just got a message from a good friend in Texas before this started.
Chava, you're freezing a little bit. Oh. Sorry, guys. I think we lost Chava for a second, but I'm sure he'll be back on. I think what he was saying is talking about the medals that we recently got. So the Chino got a double gold. Are you there?
Yeah, I got that lack of gigabytes, so I had to re-up. Being in Mexico, that happens to me a lot.
We lost your video. Okay, there you go.
Okay, got it. Back. So I was just mentioning, obviously, the value in terms of just joy with our team, especially like right now. Before I got on, a good friend from Texas was mentioning how, what do you call him? He said the Bruto, the Tequilana, and the Chino were legendary. And I was mentioning to these guys as I'm sitting here with them, and just the joy and how that all makes them feel, I think is worth all their efforts. This work is hard, but they love doing it. Kind of mentioning back their youth, a lot of these guys didn't know what they were doing with their lives, and they definitely now all kind of aspire to be mezcaleros at some point with us, which I think is really cool. One of the things I always get asked at this place is capacity levels, right? Like, what are we able to accomplish here? Just to give you a little perspective, where in Etucuaro or Cotija, on mediocre levels of kind of efforts, in the sense of like maybe one shift per day, we're able to produce between 3,000, 4,000 liters. A month. Here, we're able to produce closer to 40. So while we're not producing 40 today, obviously we're growing, and we don't know where it necessarily takes us, but we know that we're prepared for the growth that we see in the near future. So right now, as we're producing maybe close to those capacities of Etucuaro and Cotija here today, so 4,000 liters a month, we're ready. We're ready for the jump, and we can get all these ovens going in one day. The efficiencies created. You guys missed it, or a little earlier, you would have been able to see our construction team, more of our distillation team, administration team. The amount of employment we've been able to grow here is second to none. Kind of making a huge impact in that sense for all the families out in this area. So, such is the work, and we will continue to do it. So I'm not sure if we have any more to jump into. Do you see the agave supply? The agave supply for mezcal, the agave supply being an issue. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to catch that all, but I'm gonna go ahead and assume what it said. Agave supply is always a question. Not necessarily in the sense of availability. There's a lot of agave available. Some very expensive, some not that expensive. I think the big question with agave is how do we sustain this growth responsibly? And so we're doing our part every time we harvest one agave, planting 30 of the species that we're taking out of the ground, with kind of the intention to support that sustainability, to support responsible growth, and just being cautious. Once again, kind of going back to it, we're from a region that represented under 1% of all imports to the U.S. So we're still very underrepresented. We still have a long ways to go, and the ability to kind of foreshadow that, I guess maybe would be the right word, allowed us to, from a long time ago, start growing a lot of agave, making relationships with a lot of different families that farm, all of that stuff. So I don't know. I couldn't be happier. At this point, I feel like we're really set up for a really bright future because we've had the ability to slow grow into what we see next as a kind of bigger inflection. So.
Chava, someone was asking about the difference between mezcal and tequila, which you don't have to fully explain, but I think it's a good opportunity to talk about the tequilana.
Yeah, absolutely. So tequila came to be because of mezcal. So mezcal is kind of the original distillate of Mexico in the sense of agave. It is what fully represents Mexico from the north of the border all the way south, not jumping into the denomination of origin question, but just from the north to the south, there's agave being produced in different regions. At some point, tequila kind of branched off in the area of Jalisco with the specific choice of using just one agave, so Blue Weber Tequilana. But also it's an agave distillate. So kind of like champagne, where a lot of people say every champagne is sparkling wine, not every sparkling wine is champagne. Kind of true is with mezcal. Every tequila is a mezcal, not every mezcal is a tequila. So that's always something that maybe kind of brings it full circle. Mezcal is daddy. Mezcal is what came first. Mezcal is obviously done in a much more artisanal fashion. Even us who have maybe the term scaled artisanal mezcal would be used. I think that you could see that it's still a lot of hard work to make each one of our batches. And that the beauty of that and kind of the flavors that are made are, second to none. Mezcal is probably the spirit in the world that without any time in a barrel speaks the loudest and has the most flavor profiles and layers of flavors. So that I don't know if I've summed that up properly, but then going back to tequilana, the tequilana for us is kind of interesting opportunity for the market. Tequilana or Blue Weber is grown in abundance in Michoacan as well as in Jalisco. One of the reasons for that is because Michoacán has both denominations of origins to make mezcal and tequila. And so due to that, there's a lot of Blue Weber here. I think the biggest difference is tequilana, our tequilana expression, which we, roasted underground, fermented in wood, macerated by hand, distilled in the wood stills behind me. I'm gonna put it like this so you guys can keep on seeing it. I think is a proper representation of, in terms of the flavors of why tequila grew in popularity. As our good friend Lou Banks said, tequilana is kind of a special offering for that. So everyone who says they love tequila but don't like mezcal, tequilana is a great product to buy, to sip on and learn how to transition into mezcal. It's a great segue, and I think it demonstrates what more you could do with tequilana to bring a lot more flavor to the picture. Agave varietals in Michoacan. So the most uncommon that I've seen, and that's why I'm so excited about it, is that salmiana that we planted out in the front. There's 2 regions of Michoacan to date that we've seen that have a lot of it, but no one really represents it or uses it in any of their productions. And so, being La Luna, of course, we went out there and we started working in those regions and harvesting that agave to now make that expression. So tequilana would be a very common one here. Not so common in the use of mezcal, but very common in the state. You're going to have cuprieta, of course. You're going to have bruto, which is inaquidens. There's espadín and angustifolia. Some people call it espadilla, espadincillo, and espadín. All of them usually being the same. One particular family in the area of Pátzcuaro at some point started growing rodacanta that they got from Oaxaca, and so rodacanta is represented in Michoacán with the help of that family. I think I've hit all of them. If I've missed one, please let me know. But I think that's the extent of our line and what we've done. Then, of course, the next step to those agaves is ensambles or mezclas, depending, what terminology you're used to. So that would be where our ensamble comes into play. We have a tequilana and cuprieta ensamble, and then more to come. We just did a manto saguayo and chino silvestre ensamble that should be in the market soon. Yeah, my family actually produces cheese. My tío Crescencio, something that I learned recently, is an award winner as a maestro quesero. That's a thing. I think that's very special as it relates to mezcal. Kind of the wild yeast that influences Cotija cheese and all of those factors, I think is, they're very, very relative. And so, yeah, my family does. My other cousin who also has a vinata in El Batián, so it's like on the other side of our hill where we have our vinata, he produces cheese. So a lot of my family produces cheese. It's something that, the cool thing about Cotija cheese as well, which might not be known, is there's not one expression of it. There's various expressions of it. Different, you could go into a store and they could offer you 4 different producers, queseros, and 4 different choices of those cheeses. And you choose what you like more, something that's a little creamier, something that's a little saltier, something a little drier, so all these factors. So yes, my family does produce cheese. And
one more quick question. Someone's asking if you would do a pechuga at some point.
We've done a pechuga. The answer is yes. We collaborated at one point. This is how I met Lou Bank, actually. He was in La Barca, Jalisco, which is right on the other side of the border from Michoacán. And he was with the Zaragoza family from Chicago, Birreria Zaragoza in Chicago. Shout out to the Zaragoza family, Jonathan and Daddy John. And they brought that birria to our vinata and Etucuaro, and we made a pechuga out of that. And it's still something that we sip on. We didn't make a lot of it. We never really brought it to market, but we have it. We've done it. We've done avocado con. So we've done destilados, avocado with different fruits. We've done that a few times, and we will continue to do that as well. Things that we will bring to market later, just things that for us are fun and delicious, and we'll continue to do for sure.
Okay, a couple last questions. Do you have a favorite of the mezcals in your lineup?
I'm biased to the bruto. For many, it's delicious. It's an amazing expression. But I'm biased to it because it really ties back into Cotija and ties back into my family, and it would be the one that my grandpa would say is the best. So I'm biased to that one for those reasons. But honestly, yes, I'm biased to the whole thing. So I would say I love all of them. But the manto saguayo, when we first did that, and to date, it's one of the most unique mezcals that are out there that people have said in industry, especially very like orange rind, citrusy notes, kind of cheesy, funky notes as well. All of those things. And so all kind of culminated in this beautiful distillate of Manto Saguayo. So we just did another batch that we brought to market, which is different, which I think is a cool point of Mezcal, the fact that we have 3 different vinatas with 3 different wild yeasts that influence our vats, the microclimates that influence our productions. Manto Saguayo that we did in Cotija does not taste like the one that we did in Etucuaro, and I think that's the beauty of this whole thing. Where we don't have La Luna apparel for sale yet. Yet is a key word. We have more to purchase and more to sell. This is one of our newer shirts. We have some hats, we have some nice swag, but we don't have it available for sale yet. But we will soon. We will soon. Actually, to all of those that did this and signed up, I think hopefully you guys will stay subscribed to our emails. And the whole purpose of being a part of that thread and those emails is to be informed of when swag might be available, when new releases might come to market, what new retailers in your area might have mezcal from us at some point. As we grow our footprint, we want to try to do a better job of communicating with all of the La Luna supporters.
Cool. I think the only other question unanswered is if there's a mezcal style or an agave in particular that you are excited to work with.
I'm excited because of kind of like the competitive challenge of producing we have some espadín that I showed you that's here right next to me, that Juan Luis planted a long time ago. That's already mature that we're gonna do. I'm excited from the challenge perspective because obviously that's like the representing agave of Oaxaca in the sense of availability, but I'm more excited to keep exploring Michoacán without the mindset that we found everything that it has to offer. I think that's the reason that we're where we are at. Endless questioning and endless pursuit. And the reason we found the Sarmiento was for that reason, and we will continue to do that and challenge ourselves with it. And then as far as style, we don't have a reposado or añejo. We have had some rested in glass that more so for personal consumption because we've never brought it to market yet, but we hope so soon. But that stuff usually is like the puntas or something like that, which to me are very enjoyable. Maybe for other people, they wouldn't be able to come to the States because they're not under 55 as far as like certified mezcal goes. So different factors, but so we've kind of done all of them. I feel like we've done all of them at this point.
And then someone asked a good question. Since you're in both DOs, have you made a tequila and a mezcal tequilana out of the same batch of agaves?
So the reality is they're the same thing. That's what I would say. The denomination of origin separates them, but if we would have produced that tequilana, I don't know, a couple of municipalities that way, it would have been a tequila. That's kind of the beauty of that expression, actually. I think that's a perfect question to kind of summarize what that is. So the answer is kind of yes. Whereas we obviously produce it for mezcal category, because that's where we are in that denomination of origin. The answer is yes. Because quite frankly, if I were to do tequila ourselves, like not Gran Ovejo, which we buy from 1414, it's an amazing product. Love it to death. But if I were to do a tequilana, I would choose to do it the exact same way we did it here. So if we had an option to have a vinata like this in Jiquipan, for example, or actually Cotija has both denomination of origin, we could make it a tequila. So that answers that, I think. And then what's the future of mezcal? What a loaded question, Mr. Pinsoff. What a loaded question. The future of mezcal, well, I will say, is bright. I will say that numbers have shown that's a category that's growing at what would be deemed exponential levels, which I think is both concerning as well as exciting. I think that we are going to find ourselves in a world where, because we're so interconnected and able to do stuff like this, where more people who have not given mezcal a chance. Okay, qué bueno. Ahí voy. Okay, ahí voy. Because of that, I think that I kind of lost my train of thought there. But what was I saying?
You were talking about the bright future of mezcal.
Yeah, well, because I think that more people will give it a chance. I think people will give it a chance. And that's something that's just, the challenge of mezcal is really education. It's doing stuff like this. That was what, to anybody that's out in the on-prem industry. Thank you so much. Thank you for being resilient. Thank you for continuing to wait for the doors open back up, because quite frankly, I've always said, especially the people behind the bar were the number one level of educators. They were the ones who provided so much information to people who did not know anything about mezcal in the first place. They were always asking the right questions. They were the first line of defense, as I said. ¿Qué? No, fotos ahorita. Ok, dame 5 minutos, ya casi. Sí. So from that perspective, thank you so much. We need that on-prem industry to open back up. We need to learn how to educate more through things like this. COVID has showed us how to come together in these kind of platforms, and so that's kind of one of the victories I would call from this, which there's not a lot of them, but that's one. End goal for mezcal. I'm living the beginning goal and the end goal right now. So I continuing to do this work. A lot of people would say I work a lot and our team works a lot, but I could tell you that I don't think we all feel we work at all. And that's just because I don't know, it's a part of the job that we all have pride in. We all love doing. So the end goal is to grow this as much as we can in a sustainable manner, responsibly, and continue to impact more families in the sense of employment. I see us growing more than this vinata even, and maybe doing a similar one like this now that we know we can in a different municipality and influencing that maybe less than active economy. And those would be goals that I think would take us to where we need to be. So on that note, I would say thank you guys so much for the time. Please take the time, if the YouTube links on the thread here, to like our page or you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It would really help us in getting more people to view this, to check this out, and learn more about us, as well as make us findable. And we really thank you. I mean, thank you so much. I know that you guys have a lot of options and things to do. You spent an hour with us, so appreciate it. We'll be in communication through email. If you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out. I'm always available for questions at any level. So thank you. Have a great evening, and cheers. Saludos de Michoacán. Bye.